So there are a bunch of questions buried in there. So let me try and separate them and answer them one by one, but run through it quickly so we don't lose the audience. So prior crises versus this one, what's common, what's different? I think, look, as I started off with my initial comment, the causes of a crisis may differ. It could be a demand side issue, it could be a supply side issue, all of that. But what tends to be common when you're actually in the midst of these crises is just the pervasive feeling that everything is freezing up, that business is not happening. You're seeing demand dry up. You're seeing cash and liquidity become paramount. You're realizing at the end of the day that, look, what is really important in the business is cash generation, not eyeballs, not revenue, not EBITDA, not PAT, not gap adjustments, none of those. It's hard, cold cash, which matters at the end of the day. In terms of what's different this time versus prior crisis, Prajodh alluded to it, but if I were to just summarize it briefly, this is interesting because this is both a demand and a supply crisis. What do I mean by that, right? When you switched off all the levers of all organizations, businesses, countries that they use to operate, then not only are you not able to meet demand, but also your employees are not being able to show up. So if you think about a BPO company or an IT services company or any financial services company, where are the people to be able to meet the demand? Everybody is sitting at home. So that is one big factor in how it's different. And I would say the other big difference is just around the pervasiveness of this. We've all seen micro hiccups that India has had in the last 20, 30 years every time something happens, right? But never have we seen the entire global economy actually just shudder to a halt like this. Even GFC was largely restricted to the US, to Europe. India and China actually came out quite well out of the GFC and weren't that affected. So I would say these are two big differences. And if I were to then dovetail this into, therefore, look, if you think about this from the vantage point of companies, investors, what does this imply? I think first and foremost, going back to my comment around liquidity, I think capital and capital preservation is top of mind for investors, for owners, operators, managers, CEOs. And therefore, capital is extremely critical. So most investors are sitting with their portfolio companies and guiding them to have anywhere from 12 to 18 to 24 months of runway, depending on the nature of the industry that they're operating in, as well as the extent of burn that they have. And therefore, to your point, Deepak, on look, valuation and are you seeing correct? I think the initial reaction from most parties was less around valuation, more around saying, look, let's get the capital in, irrespective of what. And usually when it comes to desperation financing like this, the best people to turn to are the shareholders and the people who know you the longest. So not surprisingly, a lot of companies have actually done quick, small internal bridge rounds to get past their immediate liquidity. With regard to the second part of your point around valuation, which is how are investors thinking about it, medium term, long term, short term? I think fundamentally the short answer is there is no clear answer yet. But what you are seeing is maybe three things very clearly emerge. One is that risk has been repriced. Second is that the new equilibrium for this repriced risk has not been reached. And third is for anybody taking a view on the future, which is fundamentally what investors are doing when they allocate risk capital into a growing concern or buy a business, you need to have a view of the future. Step one is knowing even when COVID lockdown sort of gets released. Step two is understanding, look, what sort of medium term or near term opening up actually happens. Then there are obviously the questions around the cure, a vaccine, all of that. So until you start getting progressively little bit more information in each of these, it becomes very difficult to have a view about the future.